the United States not to do the same mistake it did in 1953 to overthrow a very elected government in Iran. I think that this is something that you should allow, that the pace of democracy and reform, which is far better than many other developing countries in that region or outside of that region, which we are proud of it. Of course, we have some problems in that. So this is why I would wonder how Senator Biden would say that you would give Iran, with all of these assertions that we would like to be engaged with the world, we would like to prove to the Europeans and the rest of the world that we are not for the nuclear weapons. At the same time, we would like to really get a better democracy. How would you support this process?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we should separate fiction from reality. What I did say was we should be negotiating with you. We should be discussing this with you. We should be engaged with the Europeans. The Europeans at this point do not believe that you, in fact, only have peaceful use of nuclear energy in mind. That's why they're so skeptical about what's going on. That's why Al-Baradei and others want more assurances. Number two, you are not, to the best of my knowledge, have not been cooperating with Al-Qaeda, but you are the godfather of Hezbollah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should separate fiction from reality. What I did say was we should be negotiating with you. We should be discussing this with you. We should be engaged with the Europeans. The Europeans at this point do not believe that you, in fact, only have peaceful use of nuclear energy in mind. That's why they're so skeptical about what's going on. That's why Al-Baradei and others want more assurances. Number two, you are not, to the best of my knowledge, have not been cooperating with Al-Qaeda, but you are the godfather of Hezbollah.
But they'll tell you his prescription wasn't going to work. And Governor Romney says he's got a 5-point plan. Governor Romney doesn't have a 5-point plan, he has a 1-point plan. And that plan is to make sure that folks at the top play by a different set of rules. That's been his philosophy in the private sector, that's been his philosophy as governor, that's been his philosophy as a presidential candidate. You can make
a violation of the solemn rights and protections afforded by the United States Constitution. She developed a political platform and made a career out of maliciously attacking me and my business before she even understood or was elected or reviewed one of the millions of pages of documents we willingly produced. We willingly produced these documents. James proclaimed that she, quote, looks forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day suing me and then going home. This was during her campaign. She announced that she was obsessed with, quote, taking me on, and that her eyes were set on Trump Tower, quote, Trump Tower. She even assured her supporters as an election promise very strongly that, quote, we're going to definitely sue him. Well, she even knew anything about me. We're going to be a real pain in his ass. He's going to know my name personally. And she claimed I was on an illegitimate, and that it was an illegitimate precedent. Quote, illegitimate precedent. In her AG speech, she promised to, quote, shine a bright light into every dark corner of Trump's real estate holdings. Shortly thereafter, she vowed to, quote, use every area of the law to investigate President Trump and his business transactions, and that of his family as well. Being a prosecutor is a very important thing. This is a vindictive and self-serving fishing expedition, the likes of which this country has perhaps never seen before. If there was any question in my mind, the raid on my home 2 days ago, Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Florida, by the FBI, just 2 days prior to this deposition, think of it, wiped out any of that uncertainty. I have absolutely no choice because the current administration and many prosecutors in this country have lost all moral and ethical bounds of decency. Anyone in my position not taking the Fifth Amendment would be a fool, an absolute fool. One statement or answer that is ever so slightly off, just ever so slightly.
Is that correct?
Same answer.
And when I refer to the Trump Organization, is it accurate to describe that as the trade name for an umbrella organization that holds assets beneficially owned by you?
Same answer.
Is it fair to say that the Trump Organization sits on top of several hundred different legal entities?
Same answer.
Are the assets of the Trump Organization currently held in a revocable trust?
Same answer.
Is that revocable trust the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust dated April 7, 2014?
Same answer.
And you are the donor of the assets in that trust, is that correct?
Same answer.
And you are the sole beneficiary of the assets in that trust, is that correct?
Same answer.
Why did you form that trust in April 2014?
Same answer.
That they would prepare the statement of financial condition in a manner that included false and misleading evaluation statements. Is that correct?
Same answer.
An extraordinary thing happened in Washington, D.C. They had 365 members of the House vote for something together. That included 146 Democrats.
Was that for China?
That was for the China Committee. That McCarthy says should live forever.
Yeah.
Right? This is the way the Constitution.
complaints on
Even
this.
Swalwell voted for it. He knows something about China.
Exactly.
Boom. Hey.
Nice.
Hey!
On the IRS.
If he votes for it,
Beautiful
you'll see
landing.
bang.
Well, that's very interesting. We start off with that one because if you remember when I was running in 2016, they all said Trump will get us into a war. It's his personality. He's going to get us. And actually, now they say it was my personality that kept us out of the war. So I think it was...
It was during that crisis where people don't have electricity and they're told by the state to boil water that doesn't even come out of their faucets. You decide to get online, book yourself a ticket to a first-class resort in Cancun, and then get on a plane. And after you order your first glass of wine in first class, you decide, and this is according to Senator Cruz's statement, that something just doesn't feel right about this. That, maybe this is the wrong thing to do. And then Ted Cruz did a really horrendous move. He blamed his mistake on his children. And nowhere, I can promise you, did a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old say, Daddy, I know you have important obligations as a senator, but we want to go to the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun this week, and you're going to take us. And he would succumb to that. You see, Ted Cruz said, I want to be a good dad, but here's how you be a good dad. You tend to the emotional needs of your children, so during a crisis, they don't need you. And they understand that you're a United States senator, and you're a leader, and you have responsibility to your constituents. You don't go off to Cancun because your children want to go to Cancun, and I promise you, they didn't ask to go to Cancun. This was Senator Ted Cruz's move. And now he comes back, and he suddenly wants to have a reset and put it all back together. This is gross, negligent, reckless incompetence.
Smart, they don't even say, probably just phone calls. But look, it was a PAC with many of his friends. It was a Cruz super PAC. I think he even said, well, it wasn't really meant for us. It was a Cruz PAC. It was his people. Okay, so they sent out the first picture. Please remember. Number 2, his father. I don't know his father. I met him once. I think he's a lovely guy. I think he's a lovely guy. All I did is point out the fact that on the cover of the National Enquirer, there was a picture of him and crazy Lee Harvey Oswald having breakfast. Now, Ted never denied that it was his father. Instead, he said, Donald Trump, I had nothing to do with it. This was a magazine that, frankly, in many respects, should be very respected. They got OJ, they got Edwards, they got this. I mean, if that was the New York Times, they would have gotten Pulitzer Prizes for their reporting. I've always said, why didn't the National Enquirer get the Pulitzer Prize for...
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Old Carl Rove wouldn't say, that's exactly what I was done, and I don't know why they didn't. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that's what he said. This guy's good. You got to understand, their crowd is run, their whole deal, this strip of the Republican Party that controls everybody. I realize Mr. Rumsfeld's from Illinois and others from other places. But basically, these people are white Southern Protestant males that run this deal. The people I grew up among and with. So they don't ever do much that surprises me. I've seen this all my life. And when I was a little boy, they were all Democrats. And, you know, President Kennedy and President Johnson made them all Republicans over civil rights. And, of course, now they got other issues. But they're in the saddle, and I just think it'd be an interesting thing to see what his answer would be.
About this, and I didn't talk much about it in the book, although I said about 3 sentences more than Hillary did. We went to counseling, and that's the other thing I did for over a year, and not just an hour a week, a day a week, where normally it was, 8 hours, where normally my part would last somewhere between 3 and 5 hours.
You go to somebody or they come to you?
I don't want to talk about it because so far the person hasn't been outed, and I don't want.